A mechanical engineer from Earth and an alien biologist together develop a powerful weapon that forces them both to fight in order to protect it. We open on the distant green-blue orb of Alpha 9, its vibrant jungles and strange alien flora, stretching beneath a sky unlike anything seen on Earth. The wind carries whispers of an ancient civilization, and the air is thick with the smell of alien plants. In the midst of this foreign world stands Alex Monroe, a mechanical engineer sent by the Earth government to assist in a groundbreaking research project that could revolutionize humanity's understanding of biological and technological integration. Alex glanced around, adjusting the straps on his backpack, scanning the alien landscape with awe. His mission was clear: investigate the mysterious biological phenomena occurring on Alpha 9, a planet that had been on the radar of Earth scientists for decades. But beyond the science, something deep inside him tingled in unfamiliar excitement mixed with trepidation. What if the discoveries here weren't just scientific? What if they were something much bigger? "You're staring, Monroe," a voice interrupted, smooth and musical with the lilt of an alien tongue, though perfectly comprehensible. Alex turned to face Zara Nix, the planet's lead biological researcher. She was standing tall, her skin shimmering faintly in the sunlight, with eyes that seemed to glow under the artificial light of their research station. She wasn't human, but her features, though distinctly alien, bore a strange grace. Zara had an air of authority about her, but her smile softened the edges of her commanding presence. "I can't help it. It's all so different from home," Alex replied, a slight chuckle escaping his lips as he motioned to the landscape around them. "You'll get used to it," Zara said, her voice carrying an unexpected warmth. "I did." Alex turned back toward the alien wilderness, taking in the strange, shimmering trees and bizarrely shaped plants that seemed to move ever so slightly as though responding to some unseen force. He didn't know much about the biology of Alpha 9, only that it was unlike anything humanity had encountered before. His mind was buzzing with questions. "So Zara," he began, his curiosity getting the better of him. "What's the real reason I'm here? I mean, I've been briefed, but there's something more, isn't there?" Zara's expression shifted, becoming more serious as she took a step closer to Alex, lowering her voice. "There's something on Alpha 9, something we didn't expect. We thought it was just unusual biology, but what we've uncovered is far more complex. These creatures, when humans interact with them, something happens. A physiological reaction that could change the course of human evolution." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Physiological reaction? You mean like a disease?" Zara responded, her eyes narrowing slightly with intensity. "Not a disease, a transformation, an enhancement even, and we believe it can be replicated. We're still in the early stages, but the implications, well, they're enormous." The weight of Zara's words settled on Alex's shoulders like a heavy cloak. He had expected the research to be groundbreaking, but he hadn't expected something this radical. "Enhancement. You mean people get stronger, faster?" Alex asked, still trying to wrap his mind around the idea. Zara nodded slowly. "Yes, but not just that. There's something more, something deeper, the very essence of what makes us human. How we perceive and interact with the world could change. But that's not all," she continued, pausing to look around cautiously before speaking again. "We've only scratched the surface. Some of the creatures here, when combined with human biology, have the ability to alter cells to unlock potentials in the human body that we thought were beyond reach. It could revolutionize medicine, technology, even warfare." Alex's heart began to race at the last word. "Warfare? You're telling me that this could be turned into a weapon?" Zara's expression darkened. "That's the concern. We've already seen interest from both Alpha 9's government and military organizations. They want to exploit this for their own purposes." Alex's gaze hardened. "And what do you want Zara to let them?" Zara hesitated, the tension in the air palpable. She looked out into the alien jungle, lost in thought for a moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "I want to learn. I want to understand what this could mean for our future. But I don't want it to be used for war. That's the last thing I want." Alex nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He knew this was more than just a scientific mission now. This was a moral decision, a fight for control over something that could change the world in ways neither of them could yet fully comprehend. "All right, Zara, We'll do this together. We'll figure out what's going on here, Alex said, determined in his voice. He wasn't sure where this journey would lead, but one thing was certain: he couldn't walk away now. Not when the stakes were this high. Zara offered him a small, appreciative smile. I knew I could count on you. The two of them stood there for a moment, staring out at the lush, strange world before them. In that moment, Alex understood that what they were about to uncover was going to change everything. It wasn't just about biology or technology. It was about the future of humanity. As the wind blew softly, carrying the sounds of alien creatures calling in the distance, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The world was about to change, and he and Zara were at the heart of it. The research station was quiet, save for the occasional hum of machinery. Alex sat at one of the workstations, reviewing data on his screen, his fingers typing away instinctively. Zara, busy across the room, was arranging samples in a sterile container, her focus absolute. The air was thick with tension, a feeling that only grew stronger as they dug deeper into the alien biology of Alpha 9. We've isolated the cells from the specimen, but there's something off. Zara's voice broke through the silence. Alex looked up from his screen, brow furrowed. What do you mean off? He asked, pushing himself back from the desk and walking over to her. Zara's face was a mixture of confusion and intrigue. She held a small vial of shimmering fluid that seemed to pulse faintly in the low light. This, she said, tapping the vial gently. This sample isn't behaving like the others. It's reacting differently, almost as if it's alive in a way we didn't expect. Alex took a step closer, peering at the vial. The fluid inside swirled in a mesmerizing pattern, its movements slow, yet deliberate. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. That's not normal, right? Alex asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I mean, it's not just reacting biologically, is it? No, Zara replied, her voice a mix of awe and growing concern. It's almost as if the cells themselves are communicating. I've never encountered anything like this. The more I observe it, the more I realize how little we actually know about this world. Alex's mind raced. Communication. What did that even mean? Was this fluid sentient in some way? His thoughts were interrupted as Zara set the vial down on the counter and activated the holographic display, bringing up a 3D model of the cells. The image shimmered in the air between them, showing the intricate structure of what appeared to be a blend of organic and alien elements. I've cross-referenced the genetic code. Zara continued, eyes fixed on the floating display. And this is unlike anything we've seen in any of the creatures here. It's as if it's pulling DNA from multiple sources and synthesizing them into something new. A new kind of life form. Alex was silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of her words. The implications were staggering. Was this the breakthrough they had been waiting for? Or was it something far more dangerous than they had initially realized? He leaned in closer, his eyes scanning the hologram as Zara adjusted the focus. Then it happened, an unexpected shift. The cells on the display seemed to vibrate. Then suddenly a bright flash of light burst from the model, temporarily blinding both of them. Zara instinctively shielded her eyes. What the hell? Alex stepped back in shock, his breath catching in his throat. What just happened? Was that an energy pulse? Zara was already pulling up additional data, her fingers flying over the control panel. That's not possible. The cells just emitted energy. I've never seen anything like this. Alex took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. You mean the cells, these things, they're alive, right? They're aware. Zara's voice was tight as she spoke, her gaze still fixed on the display. It's more than that. I think they might be evolving faster than we can track. And if that's the case, it means we're dealing with something we can't fully understand. Something that could have capabilities beyond what we ever imagined. Her words hung in the air like a dark cloud. If these cells were capable of generating energy, evolving in real time, what else were they capable of? Alex could feel a knot forming in his stomach. They had been so focused on the genetic transformations between humans and native creatures, but this was a new level of complexity, something that could redefine the boundaries of biology itself. Could it be that we've just found a new life form? Alex asked, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. Zara shook her head slowly, her face pale. Not just any life form. This could be the missing link, Alex. A life form that can adapt, evolve, and change in ways we can't even predict, and we have no idea what it wants. Alex's pulse quickened. The weight of their discovery was beginning to settle in. They had only been looking for answers about the biological anomalies on Alpha 9, but what they had found wasn't just an anomaly, it was a force of nature, a potential game changer in the evolution of life itself. A small beep from the control panel brought them both back to the present. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she ran another analysis. The hologram flickered, revealing an unsettling truth. The energy pulse they had witnessed wasn't a random event, it was a pattern. A signal perhaps emanating from the cells themselves. "That's it," Zara whispered almost to herself. "It's trying to communicate. We've been looking at this all wrong. This isn't just biology, it's intelligence. We've just made contact with something far beyond what we thought was possible." Alex stared at the display, his mind whirling. For a moment, he felt a chill run down his spine. They had come to Alpha 9 to study biology to unlock its secrets. But now they were standing at the threshold of something far greater, an intelligence that might not only be alien, but might even rival their own. As he turned to Zara, the uncertainty in her eyes mirrored his own. "What do we do now?" Zara met his gaze, her voice firm yet laced with fear. "We need to understand it, but we have to be careful. If this thing has the ability to evolve and adapt that quickly, who knows what it could do if it decides it doesn't like us." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He had signed up for the research for the science, but this was something else entirely. They were no longer just researchers. They were standing on the edge of something unknown, something that could change the entire course of human history. The sound of the wind outside the station grew louder, almost as if it were responding to the rising tension within the walls. Both Alex and Zara stood in silence, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. They had no idea what they had just uncovered, but one thing was certain: whatever it was only the beginning. The atmosphere in the research station was tense. The discovery of the strange cells on Alpha 9 had left both Alex and Zara reeling. What they had assumed to be an interesting biological phenomenon now felt more like an ominous warning. Neither of them could shake the feeling that what they had found might be far more dangerous than they had initially believed. Alex paced nervously, his mind spinning. They had just unlocked the potential of something they hadn't even begun to understand. The glowing cells were now contained in several samples, but every time they analyzed them, the results grew more unpredictable. Zara sat at the control panel, tapping rapidly on the keyboard, her eyes glued to the readings. The holographic display above her pulsed with strange data, its patterns shifting erratically. Alex watched her with growing concern. "What is it, Zara?" Alex finally asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "What are we looking at?" Zara's voice was tight, her expression grim. "The cells. They're adapting faster than we thought. Every time we expose them to new stimuli, they respond almost instantaneously. But there's something else. These cells, they're not just growing. They're changing, evolving." Alex's heart skipped a beat. Evolving. How, what kind of changes are we talking about? Zara turned to face him, her eyes filled with unease. "These cells are becoming something else entirely. It's as if they're drawing from the genetic material we've given them, mixing it with something inherent to them. Something that doesn't belong. The implications are terrifying." Alex stepped closer, peering over Zara's shoulder at the hologram. The patterns on the screen flickered, shifting between familiar biological structures and something foreign, something that resembled neither human nor Alpha 9 life forms. It was like a fusion of different species, constantly mutating in real time, twisting and evolving in ways that seemed impossible. "I don't understand," Alex said, his voice low. "You mean these cells aren't just changing their form, they're combining their DNA with ours, but why?" "That's not the worst part," Zara replied, turning back to the data with a shudder. "These cells aren't just adapting to their environment. They're manipulating the environment. They're influencing the biological processes of their surroundings. And when I say surroundings, I mean us, Alex." Alex froze. "You're saying these cells can control human biology?" "Exactly," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. The cells are not only reacting to external stimuli, they're actively interacting with our genetic material. They're taking control subtly at first, but soon enough, it could be irreversible. We might not even recognize what's left of us. Alex's stomach turned. The gravity of Zara's words hit him like a punch to the gut. These cells were more than just a scientific discovery, they were a threat. A threat that could manipulate their very existence. He stepped back, his mind racing. "So what are we dealing with here?" Alex asked, trying to steady his breath. "Is this some kind of new parasite? A virus or something worse?" Zara bit her lip, visibly shaken. "It's not a parasite, Alex. It's something far more dangerous. The cells are evolving into an organism capable of influencing and controlling life at a fundamental level. It's not just about strength or regeneration, it's about control. Total domination of biology. It could spread, not just here on Alpha 9, but anywhere. If we're not careful, we could be the ones who are controlled." Alex felt his pulse quicken. "Are you saying we've uncovered a weapon?" Zara replied quietly. "We've uncovered a tool, a biological tool that could rewrite the very fabric of life itself. It can evolve, adapt, and eventually take over." The silence between them deepened. The weight of Zara's words hung in the air, suffocating. They had just found something that could alter the course of not only human life, but every life in the galaxy. This was no longer a research project. This was a catastrophe waiting to happen. Zara's voice broke the silence. "Alex, we can't let this fall into the wrong hands. If the government, or worse, military forces, get their hands on this, they could use it to control entire populations. We might be looking at a biological weapon of mass destruction that could wipe out entire species, or worse, replace them." Alex nodded slowly, his throat tight. "But how do we stop it? How do we contain something that is evolving faster than we can track?" Zara's face hardened with resolve. "We need to destroy it, all of it, before it spreads any further." Alex shook his head. "But we can't just destroy it. It's too valuable. The potential for healing, for advancing human biology, we can't just throw that away." "You're not hearing me." Zara's voice grew more urgent. "This isn't something that can be controlled. It's like a ticking time bomb. And if it gets out, it will be too late. We need to contain it. Lock it away before it can cause any more damage." The two of them stood in silence, the gravity of their discovery sinking in. They had stumbled upon something that, once released, could change the very fabric of life. The consequences of letting it spread were unimaginable. But the question remained, how could they stop something that was already beyond their control? Zara glanced at Alex, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "We need to act fast, Alex, before anyone else knows about this. Before anyone else can use it." Alex swallowed hard, his mind racing with the weight of their decision. "Right. But what if we're too late?" Zara's gaze hardened as she looked toward the secure labs where the samples were stored. "Then we're all in more danger than we can even imagine." The hum of the station seemed to grow louder, more oppressive. At that moment, Alex realized they were not just dealing with an alien discovery anymore. They were dealing with a force, an unstoppable, unpredictable force that could reshape the future of life itself, and it was up to them to stop it. The days on Alpha 9 were a blur of constant research discussions and sleepless nights. The excitement of discovery was overshadowed by the looming threat of what they had uncovered. Yet amid the chaos of their work and the increasing pressure to contain the alien cells, Alex and Zara found themselves drawn to each other in ways they hadn't anticipated. What had begun as a purely professional relationship began to shift subtly and almost imperceptibly into something more personal. It wasn't just the intensity of their situation, though, that certainly played a part. It was the way they understood each other, the way they complemented one another in both their work and their moments of silence. Zara, always the cool, logical thinker, balanced Alex's more impulsive and sometimes uncertain nature. She admired his persistence, the way he dove into problems without hesitation, and how he remained optimistic even when things seemed bleak. One late evening, as they sat side by side at the control panel, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their research equipment, Zara spoke without looking up. "You know, I never thought I'd be working with someone from Earth. I thought all of you would be, I don't know, a little more distant, cold almost." Alex raised an eyebrow, glancing at her. Cold, he smirked. What's so cold about Earth? Zara chuckled softly, the sound like music in the quiet lab. I don't mean physically, Alex. I mean emotionally. We don't often work with outsiders, especially from another planet. I assumed you'd be focused only on the science, not caring about the ethics or the people involved. Alex hesitated, leaning back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the holographic display. Well, I've always believed that science means nothing if we forget about the people. And this, he gestured to the data, the holographic model of the alien cells they had been studying, this could change everything. I don't think it's just about knowledge anymore. It's about how we use it, how we protect the people who could be affected by it. Zara looked at him, then really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time in a way that transcended their professional relationship. She noticed the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet resolve in the way he spoke, and she realized just how much she had come to respect him. Her own feelings, something she had tried to suppress, began to surface. You're different from what I expected, Zara said softly, her voice almost lost in the quiet of the room. I think I was wrong about you. Alex met her gaze, surprised by the unexpected depth in her words. How so? Zara smiled faintly, a small but genuine curve of her lips. You're not just some scientist. You care about the work, about the people involved, and she paused, unsure if she should continue, but the words slipped out anyway. And you care about me too. The air in the room shifted, and for the first time Alex felt a crackling energy between them. It wasn't just the tension of their work or the urgency of their mission, it was something more personal, something unspoken but undeniable. Alex cleared his throat, a little flustered. Well, I mean, how could I not? You're incredible, Zara. The way you understand all of this, how you've managed to keep it together. It's impressive. I'm just trying to keep up with you. Zara's cheeks flushed slightly, her usual composure momentarily slipping. She glanced away, trying to hide the smile tugging at her lips. You're doing more than just keeping up, Alex. You're pushing me to think outside the box, to question everything I've always known. And that's something I never thought I'd need. Their hands brushed as they both reached for the same data pad. The brief touch sent an unexpected surge through Alex, and when he looked at Zara, he saw something in her eyes that mirrored what he had been feeling, a shared understanding, a connection that had formed gradually between them. Zara, noticing his lingering gaze, quickly withdrew her hand and cleared her throat. We should focus. We need to analyze these results. But the moment was not lost on either of them. The quiet connection had already deepened, woven through their shared work, their mutual respect, and the hours spent together in close quarters. Their bond, once strictly professional, was now threaded with something more fragile, an unspoken feeling that neither of them was quite ready to confront. The next few days unfolded in a similar manner, working side by side, their conversations more frequent, more comfortable. Even in the midst of their research, there were moments where they would share a laugh or a quiet conversation that had little to do with science. It was during one of these moments, as they sat on the balcony of the station, overlooking the lush alien landscape, that Zara spoke again. You know, she began, staring out into the distant horizon. I've never really had the chance to work this closely with someone. I've always been alone in my work, isolated in my research. It's strange, but it's been nice having you here. Alex looked at her, the soft glow of the distant stars reflecting in her eyes. I get it, he said, his voice quieter than usual. I've always been the same. I mean, you came into this thinking I'd be all about science. And I was. But now I don't know. I guess you could say I've learned to care about other things, other people. There was something in the way he said it, something that made Zara's heart flutter unexpectedly. The connection between them was undeniable now, and it was no longer just about the research or the mission. It was about them, about the way they had come to rely on each other, trust each other, even in the most trying of circumstances. Zara turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. I'm glad we're in this together, Alex. For a long moment, neither of them said anything, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, charged with the weight of everything left unsaid. Both of them knew that their relationship had shifted and had grown into something far deeper than either had anticipated when they first arrived on Alpha 9. And as they stood there side by side watching the strange alien sunset together, Alex realized that whatever the future held for them, he would face it with Zara by his side. Whether they were dealing with the alien cells or the dangers that lay ahead, one thing was clear: they were no longer just colleagues. They were something more. The days on Alpha 9 had grown more intense. What began as a series of experiments on the potential benefits of biological interactions between humans and native species was rapidly spiraling into something far more dangerous and far more valuable. As the research station's findings became increasingly more profound, the attention of Alpha 9's government and military organizations began to shift from mere curiosity to outright interest. And that interest came with its own set of complications. Alex and Zara had been working late into the night, once again analyzing their latest set of data, when a sudden buzz from the communication panel broke the silence in the room. Zara immediately glanced at the screen. It was a secure transmission from Alpha 9's central government. The encrypted message was short but direct. "We need to meet with you, Dr. Nix, and your Earth collaborator. It's urgent." The message was signed with a government insignia, one Alex had seen only once during their orientation, the insignia of the ruling council of Alpha 9. Zara looked up at Alex, her face pale. "This isn't just a request. They're calling for a meeting," she said, her voice steady but laced with apprehension. Alex leaned over, reading the message himself. His gut tightened. It wasn't just the government. It was the military, the real power behind the throne on Alpha 9. "They want us to present our findings." "But why now?" he muttered, his brow furrowed. "We've been sending regular updates." "Why are they pushing this now?" "I don't know," Zara replied, standing up. "But I think we both know why. They're beginning to realize the military potential of what we've uncovered." Alex turned to face her, his mind racing. He had been expecting this. From the moment the research had revealed the potential of the human-alien physiological fusion, he knew that the government and military would want to use it. The question was whether or not they could stop it. And now it seemed like the clock was ticking. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon in the government's Central Council chamber, a sleek, sterile room that reflected the imposing nature of Alpha 9's leadership. The atmosphere was tense as Alex and Zara walked in, flanked by a pair of armed guards. The council chamber was an imposing space, its vast windowless walls adorned with holographic displays casting an eerie dim glow over the proceedings. A tall, imposing figure stood at the head of the room as they entered. General Rax, the head of Alpha 9's military operations, was known for his ruthlessness in dealing with matters of security and military advancement. His piercing eyes locked onto Alex and Zara as they approached. "Dr. Nix Monroe." Rax greeted them, his voice cold and unfeeling. "Thank you for joining us. We've reviewed your findings with great interest, and I must say your research has exceeded expectations." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. He knew that the general wasn't referring to science, but to the potential for weaponization. Zara stepped forward, her tone measured, trying to maintain control of the conversation. "We're glad to hear that our work is of interest to you, General. But we want to make it clear that our primary focus has always been the potential for improving the health and well-being of our people, both here on Alpha 9 and back on Earth." The general raised a brow, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Of course, I understand your position, Dr. Nix. But let's not be naive. You and I both know that what you've discovered here is more than just a cure for diseases. It's power. Power that could change the course of warfare, not only for Alpha 9, but for Earth as well." Alex shifted uncomfortably. The words rang in his ears like a death knell. "General, you don't understand. This isn't just about creating soldiers. We don't know what we're dealing with. We've only begun to scratch the surface of what this fusion can do, and we're still uncertain of its long-term effects. If we lose control over it, I'm not concerned with losing control." Rax interrupted sharply, his voice growing colder. "What I'm concerned with is the balance of power. And if this research holds the potential to create soldiers who are faster, stronger, and more resilient than any in existence, then it is in our best interest to harness that power." He turned slightly, addressing the council members who stood by his side. "It's not just about defense, it's about strategic dominance. Alpha 9 needs to be prepared for any threats, not just from alien forces, but from Earth's own growing military presence. We need this technology." Zara clenched her fists at her sides, her composure beginning to fray. "General, you're missing the point. This is not just another tool for warfare. These individuals, these enhanced beings, are not weapons. They are people. They should not be treated as tools for war. Rax's gaze narrowed, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that sent a chill through her. People, Dr. Nix. Let's not pretend you're unaware of the bigger picture. This could change the course of history. It could make us invincible. Alex's voice was firm, but his throat felt tight. And if it turns into something we can't control, General, if these enhancements begin to affect not just the body, but the mind, we don't know what's happening to the people involved in this process. And I'm not willing to risk their lives or anyone else's for the sake of creating a super soldier. Zara stepped closer to Alex, her hand brushing against his in an unspoken gesture of support. Their silent bond was felt by both of them, and in that moment they stood together, united in their opposition to the military's agenda. General Rax, however, seemed unfazed. I appreciate your concern, Monroe, but the reality is the power to control this technology lies in the hands of those who are willing to do what's necessary. You'll have to choose, both of you, help us harness this for the future of Alpha 9, or face the consequences of withholding what could be the key to our survival. The air in the room grew heavy. The unspoken threat lingered, and for a moment Alex wondered if they were in over their heads. The weight of the decision before them, whether to protect the future of these enhanced beings or allow them to become pawns in a game of war, was too much for him to bear alone. Zara's voice broke the tension. We'll never let you turn this into a weapon, General. We won't let this fall into the wrong hands. Rax's lips curled into a thin, almost imperceptible smile. Then you leave me no choice. As they exited the chamber, the weight of their conversation continued to press on them. The military and government of Alpha 9 had made their stance clear. This wasn't just about research anymore. It was about control, about power, and Alex and Zara were caught in the middle. The weight of the meeting with General Rax hung heavily on Alex and Zara as they returned to their research station. The sterile, high-tech interior of the station now felt stifling, oppressive even. They had barely exchanged a word since leaving the council chamber. The military's intentions were clear, and neither of them could ignore the growing danger of what was at stake. They had discovered something monumental, something that could change everything. But the risk of its military exploitation had now become an undeniable reality. Zara sat hunched over the work table, a pile of data pads scattered in front of her. Her usually composed expression was etched with frustration, her fingers tracing over the holographic models that were now so familiar. But today the patterns no longer seemed just fascinating. They now felt like a ticking time bomb. Alex paced back and forth across the room, unable to stay still, his mind racing. The decision they had to make was enormous. Zara, he said, breaking the silence, we can't let this happen. They're going to weaponize it, use those people, those altered beings like puppets in a war. And if it's up to us to stop that, we need a plan. Zara didn't look up from the data pad in front of her. Her voice was steady but tinged with exhaustion. I know. I've been thinking about it too. Every time I look at the data, I see the same thing. They're not seeing the people involved. They're seeing power. And power blinds them, Alex. I can't let them turn this into a weapon. Alex clenched his fists, frustration bubbling to the surface. It's like they don't care about the consequences. And the worst part is, we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more we don't understand about the long-term effects of the physiological changes. What if the next person we test ends up losing their mind? Zara finished for him. Her tone was sharp, a mirror to the anxiety they both felt. Exactly. The risk of pushing this forward is greater than they realize. If we let them proceed, those individuals will become tools machines, really. And I can't stand by and let that happen. We need to protect them. Alex stopped pacing, his eyes meeting Zara's. The resolve in his gaze was clear, even in the face of the unknown. We can't wait for the military to move first. We need to take action now. We need to go to the other researchers. We need allies. We can't stop them alone. Zara hesitated, then nodded. She knew he was right. I agree. The more people we have on our side, the better. And there are a few in the research community I trust. We can't trust the government, but there are others on Alpha 9 who might understand what's at stake here. We have to find a way to protect the altered individuals and stop the military from taking control. Alex moved closer, pulling a data pad from the table and opening a secure communication line. We'll start with the head of the bioethics department. He's been against militarizing the research from the beginning. If anyone can help us, it's him. Zara leaned forward, her voice tight. And if that doesn't work, what then? If the military has already gotten a hold of this, we go public. Alex cut into determination, hardening his voice. We leak the data. We show the world what they're really doing. It won't just be Alpha 9 at risk. It'll be humanity. The military and the government can't control this if the truth is out there. Zara stood up abruptly, her eyes narrowing in thought. And if the truth is too dangerous for the public to handle, if they panic, the last thing we want is a mass outbreak of hysteria. Alex's gaze softened for a moment, knowing she was right. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but we don't have many options left. If we do nothing, they'll own this. They'll use it to create an army, and once that happens, there's no going back. Zara pressed her lips together in frustration, running a hand through her hair. I hate that it's come to this. We were supposed to be advancing knowledge, improving life. Now we're standing here trying to prevent something we created from becoming a nightmare. Alex met her eyes, his voice low. That's why we can't stop now. We're the only ones who can stop it. We owe it to them, to the people who have been changed by this, to make sure they're not used as weapons. The air between them crackled with tension, both of them acutely aware of the risks they were about to take. But the decision was clear. They couldn't sit back and let the government and military turn their research into something monstrous. All right, Zara finally said, her voice steady but laced with resolve. We start tomorrow. We'll talk to the others. We'll form a coalition and figure out our next move. But we need to act fast. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. Alex nodded, his mind made up. We'll do this together. The following days were a whirlwind of covert meetings and whispered conversations behind closed doors. Alex and Zara managed to reach out to trusted colleagues in the research community, quietly assembling a group of scientists, doctors, and bioethicists who shared their concerns. Each meeting was carefully planned to avoid detection by the military. They knew that even a whisper of rebellion could be grounds for arrest or worse. We've got to move quickly, said Dr. Hyen, the head of the bioethics department, as she paced in their temporary meeting room. Her voice was urgent. The government isn't going to sit back and wait for you to make your move. They'll come after you, Alex, after all of us. We're already on their radar. Zara leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly together. We don't have a choice. If we can't stop them now, we'll lose everything. This isn't just about one planet or one race. If the military succeeds in weaponizing this technology, they'll use it everywhere. They'll start wars. They'll control populations. This technology will be unstoppable. Dr. Hyen nodded grimly. You're right. That's why I'm in. We can't let them win. But even as they rallied support, Alex and Zara knew their task would only get harder. The military's presence on Alpha 9 was everywhere, and with each passing day their reach grew. The more they pushed back, the more dangerous their opposition became. As they left the meeting room, Zara's voice was quiet but firm. If we don't stop them soon, this could be the end of everything we've worked for. We're not just fighting for the future of Alpha 9. We're fighting for the soul of this discovery. Alex looked at her, his face resolute. And we'll win. We have to. The countdown had begun. There was no turning back now. The pressure was mounting with each passing hour. Alex and Zara had been working tirelessly to rally support among their colleagues and gain momentum for their cause. But their efforts were beginning to feel like a futile exercise in the face of the overwhelming power of Alpha 9's government and the military. The moment they had been dreading arrived sooner than expected, a direct confrontation with the forces they had hoped to avoid. It started with a message from the Alpha 9 Ministry of Research requesting an urgent meeting with both Alex and Zara. The subject line was blunt: compliance or termination. The message was a clear ultimatum. Either they would agree to the military's terms for using their research, or they would have all funding and resources for their studies revoked, effectively shutting down their work. Sitting in the cramped office of their station, Zara read the message aloud, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of it. If you refuse to cooperate with the military's plans for the application of your research, all funding and support will be discontinued immediately. Your research will be terminated. Failure to comply will result in serious legal and personal consequences. Alex clenched his fists, his jaw tightening as he processed the words. They're giving us no choice, Zara. This is blackmail. Zara's face remained cold and focused. but the anger in her eyes was undeniable. We knew this was coming. The moment they realized how powerful this could be, we became targets. But this, she gestured at the message in her hands. This is a line in the sand. They won't stop until they control everything. We can't let them do this. Alex stood up, pacing as his thoughts spun out of control. But if we refuse, we lose everything. The research, the data, the lives of the people we're trying to protect. It's not just us they're threatening. It's the entire future of this project. Zara's voice cut through the tension. It's not just about the research anymore. It's about the people. These altered individuals, we can't let them be treated like weapons, like tools for war. The military doesn't care about them. They only care about the power this can give them. Alex's shoulders slumped, exhaustion etched into his face. I know, but the pressure is unbelievable. If we walk away now, we're not just walking away from a project. We're walking away from the possibility of changing everything we've ever known. We can't be swayed by that, Zara snapped. The cost of compliance is too great. They're asking us to hand over control of something we've barely begun to understand, something that could be catastrophic if used irresponsibly. Before Alex could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. They both turned to see Dr. Hyen, one of their most trusted allies, stepping inside. Her face was grim. I heard about the message, Doctor, Hyen said quietly, sitting down. And I'm afraid things have gotten worse. The government is mobilizing. They've already begun putting pressure on the other departments to fall in line. If you don't comply, they'll blacklist your names. No one will work with you. This is bigger than just funding Alex. They're willing to destroy your career, our careers, to get what they want. Zara's expression hardened, her voice low but resolute. We knew it would come to this, but we still have a chance. We've reached out to a few other departments, people who are willing to support us. If we go public, we can expose what they're really planning. The world needs to know what they want to do with this technology. We can't let them weaponize it. Alex looked at Zara, conflicted. And what happens to us? What happens to the people we're trying to protect when the military turns the public against us? Dr. Hyen sighed deeply. You're both right. But this isn't just about a fight for your research anymore. It's about saving lives. The altered individuals, those who've been subjected to this transformation, they need protection. We can't just turn our backs on them. As they spoke, the weight of their decision grew heavier. But the situation took an even darker turn when, during one of their covert meetings with the altered individuals, they discovered something they hadn't anticipated. One of the test subjects, a young man named Jorik, had been one of the first to undergo the genetic modifications. At first, he had shown signs of enhanced strength and rapid healing, similar to the others. But as they observed him more closely, they noticed something disturbing. Jorik had begun to exhibit strange behavior, sudden shifts in mood and unsettling calmness, and most worryingly, an ability to influence those around him. It was subtle at first. When he spoke, people listened. When he moved, others seemed to follow. It wasn't just the enhanced physicality. It was as if his presence alone had begun to affect the minds of those nearby. Zara and Alex spent hours reviewing the footage and data they had gathered on Jorik. His mind, it seemed, was evolving along with his body. He wasn't just healing or growing stronger, he was controlling his own biology in ways they didn't understand, influencing the physiology of others. He could almost direct the genetic alterations in others. Alex, Zara said in a hushed voice, turning to him with a stunned expression. He's not just changing physically, he's becoming something else. It's not just power anymore. He can control people. This could be the military's worst nightmare. Alex stared at the data, his blood running cold. You mean he can manipulate others, but how? That's a whole new level of power. If they can control that, Zara shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. We don't know how far this can go. If Jorik can control the others, if he can start influencing the minds of the altered individuals, then what we've created could become a weapon of mass manipulation. This isn't just about physical strength anymore. It's about control, complete control. Alex gripped the edge of the table, his mind racing. The magnitude of their discovery had just expanded beyond anything they had ever imagined. If the military gets their hands on this, they could control entire populations. Not just armies, civilians, governments. Zara stood up pacing. Exactly. That's why we have to act fast. We need to stop them before this gets out of control. Jorik isn't the only one. If this is happening to him, it could be happening to the others. We have to protect them and stop the military before they can weaponize this power. The decision had been made. They could no longer simply fight for the future of their research. They were now fighting for the future of the altered individuals and for the very freedom of the people who had been unknowingly transformed into something they could no longer control. As the weight of their mission settled in Zara, and Alex shared a moment of quiet understanding, the battle had shifted. They weren't just opposing a military agenda anymore. They were facing an emerging force, one that could destroy everything they had worked for if they weren't careful. And it was time to act. The days following their discovery about Jorik's new abilities were filled with a heavy sense of dread. Both Alex and Zara worked tirelessly to monitor the altered individuals under the microscope of their research, but with each new data set their fears only deepened. What they had once assumed was simply an enhancement of physical strength and rapid regeneration had evolved into something much more sinister. Now it wasn't just about raw power, it was about control. It started subtly. The first signs were small. Jorik, the young man whose transformation was the most advanced, had begun to exude an aura of influence. Zara and Alex had both noticed it at first in small interactions. When Jorik was around, others seemed to gravitate toward him. At first they thought it was just charisma or coincidence, but as they watched more closely, it became clear that something far more dangerous was unfolding. Zara sat hunched over the research table, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep as she stared at the data. Alex stood beside her, his arms crossed, his brow furrowed with worry. The holographic display flickered with an image of Jorik, a calm, almost serene expression on his face as he looked into the eyes of another altered individual. "It's happening again," Zara muttered, her voice shaky with a mix of awe and fear. "Look at him. He's not just influencing them physically, he's affecting their behavior, their choices. This is something new." Alex watched the display, his heart pounding. The subject Jorik was interacting with, a woman named Kayla, had been one of the first to show signs of heightened strength, but now as she stood before him, she seemed almost submissive, her movements slow and deliberate, as though guided by his will. "This can't be real," Alex whispered, his voice cracking. "It's like he's controlling her." Zara's eyes were wide with fear as she zoomed in on the footage. "It's not just her, it's everyone he interacts with. Every single person he's near seems to undergo a subtle shift in their behavior. It's like they're listening to him." Alex shook his head in disbelief. "But how these changes? They're not just physical anymore. He's affecting their minds, their choices." Zara slammed her fist onto the table in frustration, her voice rising. "This isn't just about power anymore, Alex. This is about control. He's evolving, they're all evolving. What started as a physical enhancement is now a biological weapon, and it's going to spread." The room fell into silence as both of them absorbed the gravity of what they had just uncovered. Jorik, once a simple test subject, had become something else entirely, a force capable of altering the behavior of those around him, bending them to his will. And the scariest part was that they had no idea how far this ability could extend. Alex paced the room, trying to process the enormity of what was happening. If the military finds out about this, it's over. They'll use them to control entire populations, not just the altered individuals. The military could create an army of mind-controlled soldiers. Zara clenched her fists, her face set in a hard expression. "That's exactly why we have to stop this before it gets worse. We have to keep this from falling into the wrong hands. The altered individuals aren't just lab experiments anymore. They're becoming their own entities with abilities we can't even understand fully. If they can control each other, what's next? What happens when they turn that control on us?" Alex swallowed hard, his mind reeling. He had always been a problem solver, a tinkerer, someone who worked with machines to make them better. But this was different. This was a living, breathing nightmare, a force of nature that was beyond their control. Zara moved closer to the holographic display, her hand hovering over the controls. She tapped a few buttons, pulling up another video. This time, Jorik was standing in front of several of the other altered individuals. As the camera zoomed in, it became clear that his influence was no longer subtle. The others were not just responding to his presence, they were mimicking his movements. A series of quiet commands passed between them, unspoken but unmistakable. Zara's voice trembled. Look at them. They're not thinking for themselves anymore. He's commanding them. Alex couldn't tear his eyes away from the screen. The realization was a cold slap to the face. Jorik wasn't just a product of the experiment anymore. He was becoming its leader, the first of a new kind of being, a new species, one capable of manipulation, control, and possibly the destruction of everything they had worked for. This can't happen, Alex said, his voice barely audible. We can't let it. We can't let him let them become weapons. Zara's gaze flickered to him, her face full of determination. And we won't. But we need to act fast. If this spreads, if they all start developing this ability, we won't just be fighting for the future of the altered individuals. We'll be fighting for the future of everyone. This isn't just about Alpha 9 anymore. This is about humanity. Alex nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. We need to warn everyone. We need to go public. We have to expose this before it's too late. But the military is already involved. If they find out about this, if they discover what's really happening here, they'll never stop. They'll turn it into a weapon faster than we can blink. Zara looked at him, her eyes sharp. Then we'll have to beat them at their own game. We need to get this information out no matter the cost. We'll need to protect the altered individuals at all costs. If they're starting to develop this ability, we can't risk them being turned into puppets. They need to be free. They deserve to be free. Alex felt a rush of resolve flooding through him. Then let's do it. Let's stop this before it spreads any further. But even as they made their decision, both knew the dangers they were facing had just become far greater. They were no longer simply fighting against a government with political ambitions. They were now fighting against an evolving species, one with the potential to outmatch even the might of the military, and one that could threaten the very fabric of free will itself. And as the hours ticked by, with each new piece of data revealing just how far the altered individuals had evolved, Alex and Zara realized that they had reached the point of no return. The battle for the future had already begun, and its stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. As the days bled into one another, Alex and Zara felt the ever-growing weight of the discovery they had made. The altered individuals, once thought to be mere subjects of scientific curiosity, had evolved into something far more dangerous, more complex than they could have ever imagined. But now, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, they were about to stumble upon a truth so profound it would change everything. It wasn't just Jorik, nor the others under his influence, who posed a threat anymore. The key to their evolution, to the terrifying power they now wielded, lay in something deeper. Something they had overlooked. The source of the change wasn't just in the genetic manipulation. It wasn't just about physical enhancements. It was something more fundamental, more alive than anything they had anticipated. The realization hit them like a flash of lightning, sudden and stark. Alex and Zara had been studying the altered individuals, relentlessly trying to understand the mechanisms behind their sudden ability to manipulate each other's biology. They had hoped that by isolating the factors influencing the transformations, they could gain control over them, or at the very least understand how to halt the increasingly dangerous progression. But as they dug deeper into the genetic data, it became impossible to ignore the patterns that had eluded them before. It's not just the alterations in their genes, Zara muttered one evening, her fingers trembling over the datapad. It's the very structure of their biology. Something outside the realm of what we expected. It's not just manipulation, it's an external force, a biological consciousness. Alex leaned over her shoulder, scanning the information. You're saying it's not just the subjects that are evolving? It's something else, something that's controlling them. Zara's eyes widened in realization as she looked up at him. Exactly. There's something else. An organism, a life form we've overlooked. As the holographic images flickered to life before them, Zara isolated the genetic markers of the altered individuals. They had assumed that the enhancements were a product of the interaction between the humans and the native species on Alpha 9. But now, as they examined the genetic sequence once again, they saw the truth. The alterations didn't simply come from the merging of human DNA and alien genes. There was a third factor at play, an unknown foreign presence embedded in the genetic code. This wasn't just an experiment gone wrong, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't even from Alpha 9. It's something different. A biological intelligence beyond what we thought was possible. It's not just controlling the body, it's controlling the mind. It's alive. It's conscious. Alex's heart sank as the pieces began to fit together. We thought it was just an anomaly, a freak of nature. But this is intelligent. It's been influencing the subjects from the start. Zara nodded slowly, her expression tense. And it's not just in the individuals we've been studying. It's spreading. It's affecting everyone that comes into contact with the altered individuals. This isn't just a genetic modification. This is an intelligent biological entity with the power to control influence and evolve at will. Alex stared at the hologram, a cold chill running through him. So all this time we've been dealing with something alive, something capable of taking over entire populations. If this entity can control human biology, can it control anything else? Any species, any planet? Zara's voice was filled with dread. If this entity spreads, it could fundamentally change the structure of societies. Not just on Alpha 9, on Earth too. It could alter political landscapes, social structures, everything. We're looking at the potential for an entirely new form of biological domination. It could control entire species, humans, native Alpha 9 creatures, anything that's susceptible to its influence. The implications were staggering. Alex felt his stomach turn as he pictured the outcome. The alien intelligence was no longer just a tool to be studied. It was a force capable of bending other life forms to its will, of rewriting the very fabric of biology itself. And once it had control, there would be no stopping it. Not just on Alpha 9, but everywhere. We've been thinking of this as just an experiment, Alex said slowly. But this is more than that. This is a new form of life, a new species, a species with the power to control others, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually even. Zara met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mix of awe and terror. Yes, and it's not something we can control. If it has the ability to control the minds of the altered individuals, then it's only a matter of time before it starts affecting us. Alex clenched his fists, the weight of the realization bearing down on him. So this is it. This is what we're up against. Not just an experiment gone wrong, but a conscious entity capable of evolving, adapting, and taking over the entire planet, if not more. Zara turned back to the holographic display, her mind racing. We've been trying to find a solution, Alex. Trying to control the outcomes. But we can't. We can't control it. This thing is beyond us. It's something we've never encountered before. Alex's gaze shifted back to the screen where the images of the altered individuals flickered. They no longer looked like simple test subjects. They had become something more. They had become carriers of this new intelligence, spreading its influence, evolving its power. And the worst part, they weren't even aware of the changes happening to them. We're running out of time, Alex said, his voice heavy. If this intelligence continues to spread, it won't just change Alpha 9. It could spread to Earth, to every species it can touch. Zara swallowed hard. And we can't stop it, unless we figure out a way to sever the connection. If we can't cut off the influence of this entity, we're looking at a future where this thing becomes the dominant life form with the power to control everything. Not just the bodies, but the minds, the will, the very essence of what makes us who we are. Alex turned toward her, his expression grave. Then we have to act. We can't let it go any further. This is a threat unlike anything we've faced before, not just to us, but to the entire galaxy. Zara nodded slowly, the resolve settling in her eyes. We need to cut it off at the source. But how do we fight something that we don't fully understand? Something that's both biological and intelligent? Alex clenched his jaw, determination rising within him. We found a way. We have to. For Alpha 9. For Earth. For every living thing this could affect. But as they spoke, neither Alex nor Zara could ignore the growing sense of urgency. They had opened a door to a new world, a world that was no longer their own, and they had no idea how to close it before it consumed them all. The air in the research station had grown thick with tension, a weight that neither Alex nor Zara could shake. They had crossed a line, a point of no return. Their discovery about the consciousness behind the altered individuals, The intelligence that could control both the body and mind had turned everything upside down. It wasn't just about stopping a military agenda anymore. It was about confronting a new form of life, a new force that had the potential to reshape everything. Alex stood at the window of their small observation room, staring out at the alien landscape of Alpha 9. The trees swayed in the breeze, their movements almost hypnotic, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling beneath his feet. The beauty of the planet had become a backdrop to the chaos unfolding inside their lab. A future that had seemed so full of promise now felt like a nightmare they couldn't escape. Behind him, Zara was pacing, her thoughts clearly racing as she processed everything they had uncovered. She had always been the calm, logical one, but today her movements were sharper, more restless. The weight of the decision they faced was heavy on her shoulders. "We can't go on like this," Zara said, breaking the silence, her voice tight with frustration. "The more we learn about this entity, the more I realize we don't know. We've opened Pandora's box, Alex. I thought we could control this, that we could stop it from becoming a weapon. But now I don't know if we can." Alex's voice was low, his back still to her, as he gazed at the horizon. "I know. I'm scared, Zara. I thought we were just dealing with an enhanced species, something we could study, understand. But this is something alive, something conscious. And it's changing them. It's changing us. We can't control it." Zara stopped, pacing, her expression a mix of fear and resolve. "We can't keep studying it either, not anymore. If we continue, it's just going to spread. The longer we wait, the more people will get hurt, maybe even the entire planet." Alex turned, finally facing her. His eyes, usually full of confidence, were now filled with uncertainty. "But what if we stop now? What if we just destroy everything we've worked for, everything we've learned without fully understanding it? What if we are the ones who let it slip through our fingers?" Zara's breath hitched as she looked at him. "You think that's what's at stake here, knowledge? We're talking about lives, Alex. People's lives. The altered individuals. They're not experiments anymore. They're becoming something we can't control. If the military takes control of this, they'll use it to manipulate not just Alpha 9, but everything Earth, other civilizations, the galaxy. This can't be about science anymore. This is about saving lives." Alex clenched his fists, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. "And if we stop it, what then? What happens to the altered individuals? They've been changed. They're not who they were anymore. Can we just abandon them? Let them fall into the hands of the military, or worse, let them become weapons themselves?" Zara's face softened, and for a moment she looked just as vulnerable as Alex felt. "I don't want to abandon them, Alex. I never wanted to. But what we're facing now, it's bigger than us, bigger than the research. We've seen it. We've felt it. The power of this intelligence. We can't let it control them, control us. We can't let it win." There was a long pause, a moment of silence between them as both considered the depth of the consequences they faced. They were no longer just researchers, they were guardians, and they had to decide whether to protect the altered individuals and their newfound powers, or shut down the research and risk losing everything they had worked toward. Alex finally broke the silence. "If we stop now, we lose everything. The military will take it from us. But if we continue, if we don't stop it, if we don't contain it somehow, we risk becoming its puppets, Zara. We risk becoming part of the system we're fighting against." Zara closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression was filled with determination. "The truth is, we're already part of this fight. We're part of the reason it even exists. The knowledge we've gained, the experiments, they led to this. Now we have to be responsible for it. We have to choose. Do we continue to study it, hoping we can find a way to control it? Or do we protect the people involved and stop the research before it gets worse?" Alex's mind was spinning. There was no easy answer. If they stopped the research now, they would lose the chance to fully understand this new life form. Its potential, its dangers, its biology. But if they continued, they risked unleashing something that could spiral out of control. Something that might destroy not just Alpha 9, but the fabric of life itself. "What if we could find a middle ground?" Alex suggested, his voice quieter, now filled with a rare glimpse of hope. What if we contain the knowledge, protect the altered individuals, and stop the military from getting their hands on it? What if we could work with the people we trust to create a solution? Zara shook her head, her expression firm. Alex, there is no middle ground here. This intelligence is too powerful. The more we learn, the more we realize we're not in control anymore. We have to make a choice. Do we let this power fall into the hands of those who want to weaponize it, or do we take responsibility for what we've unleashed and stop it before it spreads any further? Alex looked at her, feeling the weight of their decision. And if we stop it, what happens to the altered individuals? What happens to Jorik and the others who have already changed? Are we just going to abandon them? Let them be destroyed by the same people who created them? Zara's voice softened. I don't know, but we have to protect them. We can't just let this power continue to grow. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. We have to make a stand. For them, for everyone. Alex stood there feeling torn in every direction. But in the end, one thing was clear. Whatever they chose, it would change everything. They couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when the stakes were this high. I don't want to make this decision, Alex said, his voice filled with frustration. But we don't have a choice anymore. We have to stop it. We can't let this thing control everything. Zara nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. Then we'll stop it. Together. And with that, they made their decision. The battle was no longer just about saving their research. It was about saving the future from a force they couldn't fully understand. It was a fight between knowledge and survival, between ethics and the reality of the consequences of their work. The time for indecision was over. The time for action had come. The tension had reached its boiling point. The research station on Alpha 9, once a place of curiosity and discovery, had now become a battleground. Alex and Zara stood at the precipice of a choice that could either save or destroy everything they had worked for. The world they had once hoped to better understand was now a place where science, ethics, and survival were colliding in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The altered individuals once thought to be subjects for scientific observation had become something much more, something far more dangerous. Jorik and the others, now influenced by the alien consciousness that had embedded itself within their genetic structure, were no longer just altered beings. They had evolved into entities with their own minds that were growing stronger, and their influence was spreading faster than Alex and Zara had ever expected. Alex paced in the war room, his mind whirring with calculations or strategies and, most of all, fear. The military forces from both Alpha 9 and Earth were closing in, and the time to act was running out. The military had already infiltrated their ranks, and their offer, if they could call it that, was clear: either help them harness the power of the altered individuals and weaponize them for war, or face the consequences of opposing their will. We don't have much time, Zara said, her voice low, but filled with steely determination. She stood beside Alex, watching the data streams that were coming in from the monitoring systems. The military is already positioning their forces. They won't give up without a fight. Alex nodded, his face tense. And the altered individuals, we've seen what Jorik and the others can do. They've become more than just experiments. They can control the minds of those around them. If the military uses them for their own gain, Zara's expression darkened, they'll create an unstoppable army. This isn't just about fighting for control of Alpha 9 anymore. It's about control of the entire galaxy. If they manage to weaponize this ability, it will be over for everyone. Alex turned sharply toward her, his fist clenched. We can't let that happen. We can't let them turn what we've learned into a weapon. These individuals, they are living beings. Not tools, not pawns. And we're not the only ones who see it that way, Zara said. I've spoken with some of the others. There's a group of researchers who still believe in preserving the integrity of these altered beings. We have to get them on our side before it's too late. Alex let out a sharp breath. If we fail, if we lose this fight, we won't just lose our research. We'll lose their future. Jorik's future, and all the others. Suddenly, the communication system on the wall blinked to life. A new transmission from General Rax, the military leader of Alpha 9, flashed across the screen. His cold, calculating voice echoed through the room. You've made your choice, Dr. Nix Monroe. The time for negotiation is over. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll take control of the altered individuals by force. You've been warned. The transmission ended as quickly as it had started. The finality of his words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Alex and Zara exchanged a look. This wasn't just a negotiation anymore. It was a war. Zara clenched her jaw. I knew it would come to this. We can't back down now. We have to protect them. Alex's mind raced his thoughts, swirling in a vortex of urgency. But how? The military is too powerful. They have the resources, the manpower, everything they need to control this. Zara's face hardened, her resolve clear. Then we'll fight back. We fight with what we have. We're not alone in this, Alex. We have allies. We have knowledge. And we have the truth. If we can expose what the military plans to do, we might still have a chance to stop this. But as they spoke, the sound of marching boots echoed in the distance, footsteps growing louder with every passing second. The military's forces were moving in, and Alex knew that time was no longer on their side. The final confrontation took place in the heart of the research station, where the altered individuals had been kept under close watch. The military had arrived in full force, their armored soldiers surrounding the area, weapons at the ready. General Rax stood at the forefront of the military contingent, a sneer on his face as he looked at Alex and Zara. This ends today, Rax declared, his voice dripping with authority. You've had your chance to cooperate. Now we take what's ours. Alex stepped forward, his eyes burning with determination. You're making a mistake, General. You think you can control them, but you're wrong. They're not your soldiers. They're not your weapons. Rax's expression remained unchanged. You've failed to understand the bigger picture, Monroe. This power, this potential, it's what will make Alpha 9 invincible. The altered individuals are a means to an end, and that end is our ultimate victory. Your victory, Zara's voice rang out, filled with defiance. What happens when this power turns on you, General? When you can no longer control them, you think you can force them to fight for you, but they won't be your puppets. They're evolving, and when they realize the extent of their power, they won't take orders from you anymore. Rax narrowed his eyes, a flicker of doubt crossing his face for a brief moment before his demeanor hardened again. Enough talk. Secure the area. Capture the altered individuals. Bring them under control. But just as his orders were given, something changed. Jorik, who had been standing in the back of the group of altered individuals, stepped forward, his calm demeanor now replaced with an intensity that made everyone in the room stop in their tracks. No, Jorik's voice rang out, a strange resonance in the air, the authority in his tone undeniable. The altered individuals around him stood still, their eyes all focused on him. He was no longer a subject to be controlled. He was the leader now. Alex's heart pounded as he watched the scene unfold. Jorik, he whispered, fear and awe mixing in his voice. Zara's voice was tight. He's taking control of them. Jorik raised his hand, and the other altered individuals immediately fell into line behind him. It was no longer a subtle influence, it was absolute. The soldiers surrounding them seemed frozen, as if their very thoughts were being twisted by the power emanating from Jorik and the others. General Rax's face twisted in disbelief as he realized what was happening. This isn't possible. They can't. But before he could finish, the altered individuals moved in unison, their heightened abilities on full display. They were no longer just enhanced. They were aware of their power, and they had chosen to stand against the military. Alex and Zara stood at the front, watching as their once captive subjects became the very force they had feared. It was a battle of wills, a clash between the old order and the new power that had risen from their research. Rax's men struggled to maintain control, but they were no match for the unified will of the altered individuals. The station was a battleground of shifting alliances, one group fighting to maintain power, the other fighting for freedom. As the chaos unfolded, Zara and Alex exchanged a glance. The fight was not over, but they had won the first battle. They had to keep pushing forward. The world was changing, and whether they wanted it or not, they were at the center of it. And in that moment, they realized this was no longer just about saving their research. It was about saving the future. The aftermath of the confrontation was a tense stillness. The battle had been won, but Alex and Zara knew the war was far from over. The altered individuals, who had once been pawns in a high-stakes game of military power, now stood at the center of a new world, a world that had yet to understand the true scope of what had happened. The military forces from Alpha 9 and Earth had retreated for the time being, but the battle for control of the genetic power they had unleashed would not be easily forgotten. Alex and Zara, their hearts heavy with both relief and fear, stood together in the ruins of the research station. The structure, which had once been a beacon of hope and scientific progress, now lay in disarray, its walls scarred by the conflict. Yet amidst the chaos, there was a quiet sense of resolve in the air. This was not the end. This was just the beginning. "We can't let them take control again," Zara said, her voice resolute as she turned to face Alex. "We've seen what they're capable of. If the military gets another chance, they'll use this power to destroy everything we've worked for. We can't let that happen." Alex nodded, his face set in grim determination. "I agree. We have to protect them. They are the future, and we can't let anyone turn them into tools for war." The two of them knew that their next step would be their most difficult one. They couldn't just hide from the forces that wanted to exploit the altered individuals for military gain. They needed to act publicly, powerfully, and in a way that would protect the freedom of the altered individuals and ensure their future. They quickly set to work gathering those who had supported them, building a coalition of researchers, activists, and those within the government who believed in their cause. They called it the Alliance for the Freedom of the Altered. The purpose was clear: to safeguard the altered individuals, help them understand their powers, and protect their right to live free from exploitation. "It's not just about stopping them from being used as weapons anymore," Zara said one night, looking over their plans for the future. "It's about ensuring that they can live their lives without fear, without oppression. They're not experiments. They're not weapons. They're people, and they deserve a future." Alex paced beside her, his brow furrowed in thought. This isn't going to be easy. The military won't let go of this power so easily. In Alpha 9 Earth, they'll want control. If we can't stop them from taking this power, we risk everything. We risk the future of every living species in the galaxy. Zara paused, her hand resting on the table. "But what if we don't stop them, Alex? What if we just give up? What kind of future are we leaving for the next generation of altered individuals? What kind of future are we leaving for everyone?" Alex stopped pacing and looked at her, the weight of their situation sinking in. "I can't live with that. We're not just protecting the altered individuals. We're protecting everyone. Because if this power falls into the wrong hands, it won't just be their future at risk. It'll be everyone's." The two of them exchanged a quiet look, a shared understanding passing between them. They had no illusions about the magnitude of their task, but they had made their choice. They couldn't sit by and let the altered individuals be used as weapons. They had to ensure that the powers they had unlocked were used for peace, not destruction. The alliance quickly grew in both strength and influence, drawing supporters from across Alpha 9 and even Earth. The message was clear: this power must not be abused. Alex and Zara worked tirelessly to educate the altered individuals about their abilities, helping them learn to control and understand their newfound powers. It wasn't just about the physical enhancements, it was about the mind control that had come with them. And that was the real challenge. Yorick, who had once been the first to lead the altered individuals into rebellion, now stood alongside Alex and Zara as a symbol of their new hope. Together, they began to build a new society, a society where the altered individuals could live freely and use their powers to help others, not as tools of war, but as agents of peace. "We need to be prepared," Yorick said one afternoon, addressing the group of altered individuals who had gathered for a meeting. "We've been given these abilities for a reason. We can help people, protect them, heal them, and guide them. But we must never forget what happens if this power is misused." Zara nodded, standing beside him. "You're right, Yorick. The most important thing we can do now is show the galaxy that we are not threats. We are not weapons. We are people. We have the right to live freely, and we will defend that right." The altered individuals stood in solidarity, their expressions determined. They had been transformed into something powerful, but they now had a responsibility to themselves, to each other, and to the rest of the galaxy. But even as the Alliance worked to establish their new society, Alex and Zara knew they were not safe yet. The forces that sought to exploit the altered individuals, whether from Alpha 9's government or Earth's military, would never stop. They would continue to pursue them to try to bend the altered individuals to their will. The war for freedom was far from over. One night, as they stood looking out over the quiet encampment of the altered individuals, Alex turned to Zara, his expression serious. "Do you ever think we're fighting a battle we can't win?" Zara's eyes remained focused on the horizon, but she smiled softly. "Every battle feels like that, Alex. But we can't give up. If we do, we risk everything. Not just for us, but for every life that could be affected by this power. Alex's eyes softened as he gazed at her, the bond they shared growing stronger with each passing day. Then we'll fight. For them. For the future. Zara nodded, the weight of the world on her shoulders, but a sense of peace in her heart. We'll fight. Together. And so the Alliance for the Freedom of the Altered continued to grow. The altered individuals, once prisoners of a system that sought to control them, were now free. But their fight was not over. The struggle for their freedom, their dignity, and their future would continue. And Alex and Zara, standing at the helm of that fight, knew that the path ahead would be long and uncertain. But they also knew that as long as they fought for what was right, they would never back down. In the end, their fight wasn't just for the altered individuals, it was for the future of all life, for the preservation of freedom, and for the hope that even in the face of overwhelming power, humanity could choose a different path. The war for freedom was not won easily. Alex and Zara had fought fiercely, not just with their words, but with their actions, their determination, and the trust they had built in the alliance. They had managed to halt the immediate threat of the military's control over the altered individuals, and the world had seen their message that the power within the altered individuals should not be weaponized. But even with their victories, they had come to realize that the fight was far from over. Sacrifices would have to be made, and some of them would come at a cost far greater than they had anticipated. Alex sat on the edge of a broken stone wall, the remnants of their research station in the distance, now a symbol of both their success and their sacrifice. The winds of Alpha 9 carried the scent of the alien wilderness, but the familiar air of the planet now felt heavier. It was the calm before the storm, and despite the temporary peace, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Zara approached quietly, her footsteps light on the soft ground. She looked as worn out as Alex felt, but there was still a fire in her eyes. The fire that had kept them going through the darkest times. The fire that had pushed them to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. "We did it," Zara said softly as she took a seat beside him, her voice carrying the weight of both relief and sadness. "We've managed to protect them. The altered individuals, the ones we've been able to save, they're free now, at least for the time being." Alex nodded slowly, his hands resting on his knees as he stared out into the horizon. "But at what cost, Zara? We stopped the military for now, but it won't be long before they try again. They'll keep coming, and we'll have to keep fighting. I never imagined our fight would turn into a lifelong battle." Zara's face hardened, her gaze focused on the distant mountains. "I never imagined it would be this hard. We've already lost so much. My career. Your reputation. We've given up everything to fight for these people. And yet, it still doesn't feel like enough, does it?" Alex's voice was heavy, tinged with the weight of the sacrifices they had made. "We didn't choose this, Zara. None of us did. But we've made our stand. We've stopped the military for now, but we know they won't give up. We're just one part of a larger conflict, a conflict that will continue until the world understands what we're fighting for and what we're fighting against." Zara let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping with the exhaustion of it all. "I know. I thought we'd be able to fix everything, that once we stopped the military, it would be over. But now I don't know. We've protected the altered individuals, but the threat is still there. The entity that manipulates them, the one that's embedded in their biology and their minds, it's still out there." Alex's heart tightened at the mention of the entity. Despite everything they had done to halt the military's plans, the true danger remained an intelligence far beyond their control, embedded in the altered individuals. It had taken root in their very being, in their genes, and had the power to manipulate them, to control them. Zara turned toward him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "It's still alive. And the military, they know it's still out there. They won't stop looking for a way to weaponize it. They'll come for us again." Alex's voice was quiet, almost to himself. "It's not just the military I'm worried about. It's what this entity could do if it's left unchecked. If it takes control again, it won't just threaten the altered individuals. It'll threaten everything." Zara reached out, placing a hand gently on his. "I know. I think we've both been hoping that if we stop the military, we stop the problem. But the truth is, we don't know how to stop it. Not really. We can't remove the entity from their biology. We can't unmake what's been done. A silence fell between them, thick with the realization that their journey was far from over. They had succeeded in protecting the altered individuals for now, but the price of their victory had been steep. Their personal lives were in ruins, their careers dismantled. They had become fugitives, hunted by both the military and those who sought to control the power of the altered individuals. "I never thought this would be the outcome," Alex said, his voice low. "I thought we could save them. But now I don't know if we can save anyone." Zara's expression softened, and she squeezed his hand. "We've saved them for now. That's enough. We've kept them free, and that's a victory in itself. But I know you're right. The entity, the power, it's still out there, and we don't have the answers. But that doesn't mean we stop fighting." Alex looked at her, his face etched with the weight of the choices they had made. What happens next? What do we do now? Zara stood, her posture steady as she looked out over the landscape. "We keep going. We keep fighting. We protect them. We protect the future. This isn't just about us anymore, Alex. It's about everyone. The altered individuals, the ones who haven't been changed yet, the ones who might be next. We're not done. Not by a long shot." Alex nodded, his heart swelling with both fear and hope. "And if the military comes again, if they try to take control," Zara turned to him, her eyes resolute, "then we fight again. We don't stop. We protect them. And we protect the future, whatever the cost." There was no easy answer to their situation, no clear path forward. The entity that had taken root in the altered individual's biology was still a ticking time bomb, and the military forces, both from Alpha 9 and Earth, were sure to return. But at that moment, Alex and Zara understood one thing: they would never give up. The altered individuals had been freed, but their journey was far from over. In the face of overwhelming odds, Alex and Zara had chosen to protect what was right, to fight for the freedom of those who had no voice. And though the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, they knew they had made the only choice that mattered. They had chosen to fight for a future worth believing in. The world they had once known had slipped away, replaced by something unrecognizable, something both terrifying and full of possibility. Alex and Zara stood together, overlooking the vast landscape of Alpha 9, the horizon stretching endlessly before them. The planet, once a place of hope and scientific curiosity, now felt like a battleground, a place where the future was yet to be written. The altered individuals, the ones they had fought so hard to protect, had found a fragile peace for now. They were free from the grasp of the military, their minds their own. But despite their victories, despite everything they had sacrificed to keep them safe, Alex and Zara knew the danger had not disappeared. The entity and intelligence that had embedded itself within the altered individuals was still out there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to resurface. "We've won," Alex said quietly, his voice filled with a quiet resignation. "For now, but I can't shake the feeling that we're only at the beginning of something much bigger." Zara stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon, the shadows of the distant mountains stretching like fingers across the land. "I feel it too. We've protected them. We've protected the future for these individuals. But that doesn't mean the war's over. The entity still exists, still holds power over them. We may have stopped the immediate threat, but the true battle is still ahead." Alex nodded slowly, his hand brushing against the smooth surface of the rock they were standing on. "And yet we can't just wait for it to happen. We've done what we could. We've stopped the military from taking control. We've kept the altered individuals safe for now. But I don't know if that's enough." Zara turned to him, her expression both weary and resolute. "We've done more than enough. We've kept them free. And that's a victory in itself. But we know this fight isn't over. It's not just about protecting these individuals anymore. It's about protecting the future. All futures. Not just the future of Alpha 9 or Earth or any one species, but the future of every living being that could be affected by this power." Alex's eyes met hers, and for a moment the weight of everything they had been through hung between them. They had both lost so much: careers, reputations, personal lives. They had become fugitives, labeled as outlaws for standing up for what they believed in. But in that moment, standing side by side with Zara, Alex realized that despite everything, they had done the right thing. They had chosen to fight for the future, even if it meant sacrificing everything they had known. I never thought we'd end up here, Alex said softly, fighting for freedom for something we couldn't even fully understand. I thought we could change things with science, with knowledge. But now I realize it's not just about what we know. It's about what we do with that knowledge, what we choose to protect, what we choose to fight for. Zara gave him a small, thoughtful smile, her eyes reflecting the depth of their shared experience. We've learned a lot, Alex, about the power of science, about the dangers of knowledge without ethics. We've learned that power isn't just something to be wielded, it's something that can shape worlds for better or worse. And it's up to us to make sure it's used for good. The two of them stood there in silence, the weight of the world pressing down on their shoulders. They knew that the altered individuals, despite their freedom, were still in danger. The entity that had manipulated them was still out there, still alive, still a threat. And even if they had protected them for now, the future remained uncertain. There were forces beyond their control that would always seek to exploit this power for their own gain. We'll continue the fight, Zara said, her voice firm with conviction. We'll keep them safe. We'll keep fighting for their right to be free, for the right of every individual to live without fear of being controlled, manipulated, or used for war. But we also have to be ready for whatever comes next. The future isn't just going to fall into place. We have to make it happen. Alex looked out across the alien landscape once again, his gaze steady and unwavering. And we will, together. We've faced the impossible before, and we'll face it again. We don't know what the future holds, but we can't let that stop us. We have to keep going. We have to keep believing in a better world. Zara nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. The future is uncertain, but as long as we fight, there's hope. Hope for the altered individuals, hope for Alpha 9, hope for Earth, and hope for every species that could one day face the power we've uncovered. We're not just fighting for our lives, Alex. We're fighting for the future of all living things. The two of them stood there for a long time, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the alien world. It was a peaceful sight, but the quiet was deceptive. The calm was only temporary. The battle they had fought had been just one chapter in a much larger story, one that was still unfolding. Alex and Zara knew they had made the right choice to protect the altered individuals, to fight for their freedom, to safeguard the future. But they also knew that their journey was far from over. The world was changing, and no matter how uncertain that future was, they would continue to fight for what they believed in. For science, for ethics, for freedom, and for a future where all species, all living beings, could coexist in peace, free from the threat of manipulation and war. In the end, Alex and Zara stood at the crossroads of a new world, their journey marked by sacrifice, discovery, and a deep commitment to the ideals they had fought for. They had faced unimaginable challenges, from the military's pursuit of power to the terrifying reality of an intelligence beyond their control. But despite the dangers, they had succeeded in protecting the altered individuals, offering them a chance at freedom and a future of their own choosing. Yet the battle was far from over. The entity that had embedded itself in the altered individual's biology still lingered, its influence a constant threat. Alex and Zara knew the future would be fraught with uncertainty, but they remained steadfast in their belief that science and ethics could guide humanity toward peace. Together, they forged a path forward, not just for themselves, but for all life forms, determined to protect freedom and ensure that knowledge would be used for good. As the horizon of Alpha 9 stretched before them, Alex and Zara understood that their fight was not over. It had only just begun. The future was unknown, but they would face it side by side with unwavering hope and resolve.